Hi guys, today we're going to talk about pregnancy. So this will be the last lesson in the reproduction unit. And then we'll move on to our next unit, which is we're going to do the astronomy unit next, and then we'll finish off with the electricity in the end. Okay, so pregnancy. Some of you may have you may have seen your own mom be pregnant, like maybe you have some very significantly younger siblings, and so you might know a little bit about it already. Pregnancy happens when a female's egg is fertilized with the sperm from a male. So fertilization occurs in the fallopian tube. So that's one thing that people kind of don't realize, that here's the penis inside the vagina here, and then the ejaculation. And then what happens is this is where the little egg is over here. And so that's why there has to be so much sperm, because the sperm has to swim all the way through and find the egg, and some of the sperm are going to go the wrong way. They're going to go to the wrong ovary. So that's why we need lots of sperm. Now the egg is fertilized then in the fallopian tube, and then once it's fertilized, then we've got a blastocyst, and then it moves down through the fallopian tube into the uterus and attaches there. So only one sperm will fertilize the egg, unless there are twins. And only fraternal twins too. So identical twins are just one egg, one sperm. And then what happens is they have the same genetics. We talked about that before, right? The DNA is identical. But for fraternal twins, this would be when there has to be two eggs released by the mother. And then the two eggs are fertilized by two different sperms. So fraternal twins are actually no more strongly related than any other brother and or siblings, I should say. Other than that, they are obviously exactly the same age. Okay, so we start off with the zygote after fertilization. So this is the new egg cell once it has been fertilized by the sperm. So you can copy that one down in your notes there. And it travels to the uterus and begins mitosis. So once it's fertilized, we call it a zygote, and then it travels. So then it starts its journey on the way to the uterus, where it's going to undergo mitosis and start replicating to become a baby. So the blastocyst is what the zygote is called once it reaches the uterus. So you can see here, this is the blastocyst here, and this is the endometrium, which is the lining of the uterus. So this would be a nutrient-rich lining here. So the blastocyst is going to attach itself on that endometrium there. So the inner cells form the embryo, and the outer cells of the blastocyst are going to form the placenta. We'll talk about the placenta in a second, but they are two separate things, so that the embryo is separate from the placenta. So the embryo needs to attach itself to the thickened lining of the uterus, which is called implantation. So that happens 6 to 10 days after the egg is fertilized. That is technically when the pregnancy begins. The hormones are going to tell the female body to keep the uterine lining, so to not shed the lining, it's going to keep the lining there. And that's why when someone is pregnant, they do not have a period, because that lining doesn't need to be shed. The lining is kept there to supplement the egg. And it's going to be used for nutrition for the embryo. Now, during the first week of pregnancy, all of the cells are similar to each other, so they don't start specializing yet. That only happens here in the second week. And they start to be arranged into 3 distinct layers. So the 3 layers are the ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. So the ectoderm is the outer layer. It says in the diagram here, it's this blue layer here. And it's going to form the skin and the nervous system. The mesoderm is the middle layer. It's the sort of orangey one here. That's going to form the kidney, skeleton, muscles, and blood vessels. And then lastly, we have the endoderm, which is this green layer here. It's our inner layer. And it forms the lung and the digestive tract. Okay, placenta. Now, so this is a really, I like this diagram. This is or a picture this of the placenta here. So this is the placenta. The placenta is actually an organ. So when someone is pregnant, they actually grow an organ, the placenta, and the placenta will actually get delivered at the birth too. People kind of never talk about that. The baby is delivered, and then the placenta is delivered after that. So here we've got the little fetus. It's growing here, or the embryo is growing. And it's attached to the placenta, and the placenta is what supplies nutrients and oxygen to the developing embryo. It also, one of the other function is that it removes the wastes that are created by the embryo. Sometimes people don't realize that embryo is creating waste as it grows and develops. And it's an organ that the mother grows and will deliver at birth. I already talked about that. Good. Now the umbilical cord. The umbilical cord attaches the embryo to the placenta. So that is this cord here. You can see that. It's cut at birth. Now, this is one of those things where on TV shows and movies, sometimes they'll say that the father cuts the umbilical cord. I'm not sure that ever actually happens. It certainly didn't happen when I had my babies. The doctors just do it. But eventually you're going to cut the umbilical cord at birth. So the baby's delivered, obviously with the umbilical cord still attached. They cut it, and then it shrinks, and that's going to be where your belly button is. And so innies and outies belly buttons, I don't know if you guys have ever thought about that, but this basically is just how it heals. So everyone's umbilical cords are cut at birth, and just based on how it heals will determine whether you have an innie belly button or an outie. Now, this is just part of the growth and development here. So the embryo grows really fast. A tube-like heart starts beating at approximately only 3 weeks old. So this is a picture of 6 weeks here. But this is our embryo here. And then this is our heart here. So that heart starts beating at approximately 3 weeks, which is quite early. And by the end of the 4th week, the embryo is 500 times bigger than its original size. So there is major growth going on during that first trimester. Now it takes 38 weeks, so that's where we get our 9 months from, for the baby to develop. So when people go through, we talk about pregnancy as being 9 months, but when someone's having a baby, you tend to track the development in terms of weeks. So 38 weeks. Pregnancy is divided into 3 trimesters. So the word trimester, it's 3 because of the tri here, right? That means 3. And each one of them is approximately 3 months long. We're going to talk about how they develop. So this is the first trimester. So this is weeks 1 to 12. So stages of fetal development here. So as you can see, by the end of the first trimester, it's looking a little more human-like at the end here. And at this point, you can actually get basic facial features are in place. One thing to note, which is I always think kind of interesting, is your eyes actually start out at the side of your head. So the eyes actually start out on the side, and this picture doesn't show it that well. But then as you develop, your eyes move forward. Yeah, so it's very interesting. Second trimester, weeks 12 to 24. This part, we've got your skin is see-through, so you can actually see through your skin at this part. A hair will start growing, and you start to get a little fat on your body. And by the end of this trimester, the baby can actually open their eyes too. Now, third trimester, the baby's growing quite significantly at this part, and it's getting much more crowded inside the uterus as well. There has been studies to show that babies actually in utero, so while they're in the uterus, will actually respond to stimulus, to an outside stimulus, like a light being shined on a pregnant woman's stomach. It's really interesting stuff. Now, the embryo growth and development here, this just shows how it gets bigger over time here. And so it is quite a bit bigger, obviously, from, what is this? Fertilization age. Oh, sorry. Yeah, and this is to 15 weeks here. So this is literally just past the first trimester. So it just shows major growth in that first trimester. So lots of growth and development going on. Okay, birth. Birth occurs approximately 9 months after pregnancy begins. So this is an image here of a premature baby, and some of you were probably premature. It's not particularly uncommon. Survival rates, though, are always getting better all the time. So babies born at 23 weeks, the survival rate's 20 to 35%. 24 to 25 weeks, it goes up significantly. And then at 26 to 27 weeks, keep in mind that we said 38 weeks was full term. So this is still significantly premature at the 27 weeks, yet 90% will survive. So the stats are really good. The baby may have to stay in the ICU or NICU and with a incubator, but very much likely to survive due to medical advancements. So labor is triggered by hormonal changes. So basically the woman's body, the hormones start being produced that cause things to start happening. So the cervix is going to dilate. Again, you always hear this in TV shows and movies, and right now you probably know, right at the top of your head, it has to get to 10 centimeters. So when they're talking about that dilation, what they're talking about is the cervix here. So this is the cervix. And so once that cervix gets to 10 centimeters, that would be fully dilated at that point. So 10 centimeters is really not that large, but it will stretch past that to allow the baby to be delivered. And these, yeah. Now, contractions by the uterus are going to force the baby into the birth canal and out of the body. Remember when we talked about the uterus, we talked about how the uterus had was a very strong muscle. So it's literally going to push that baby down and out. And when you're having contractions, they can be quite painful, but not always. You feel just a hardness across your stomach area, across where the baby is, and that's your uterus just contracting. And you can really tell what that feels like. It's a very strong feeling. So the baby gets into position during the last few weeks of pregnancy. So its head is down and it drops. Sometimes people will talk about that. The baby has dropped. So the baby has to come down here. So its head is entering the birth canal here. So it's got to be upside down. Sometimes babies can be delivered feet first. That would be called breech, but it can lead to a lot of complications. So it's definitely better if the baby gets into good position here. And then this would be the normal vaginal delivery like this. So first the head comes out, and then then push the rest of the baby out. And then here you'll see this is the placenta here. So just keep an eye on that. Now the placenta, this is what it looks like here. So this is an organ. The placenta is delivered after the baby. So it's very important to get all of the placenta. This can cause problems for women. Actually, my mother had this happen where part of it was left in. So sometimes part of it can stay a little bit attached here. That's very, very dangerous for the mother, and women can die from that. But hopefully that doesn't happen, and the placenta is delivered easily after the baby, and everything's fine. And this is just a classic picture. I think this is one of the most famous birth pictures. It's just pretty beautiful. Hey, you've got the whole team in there. I think that was a baby born by a cesarean section or C-section. Baby looks very happy to be in the world. Okay, breastfeeding. So breastfeeding is part of the reproductive system for a female. So the hormone changes that happen during pregnancy and birth will trigger the mother to develop milk in her breasts. So if a baby is not breastfed, a baby must be bottle fed in order to thrive. So there's no other way for the baby to do it. They have to eat milk for that first little bit. Now, infancy. Infancy lasts from birth to age 2 years. During this time, the baby learns to feed. Its main concern is to find the nipple. It will turn its head and it will root to find the nipple. This was a video of a baby rooting, and I'll post a link to it as well that you can look at it tomorrow. It's just a 10-second thing. When babies are hungry, they all kind of make the same motion, and well, I'll let you watch the video of that tomorrow. Childhood. Childhood is from age 2 to puberty, so a lot of physical growth during this time. And you guys are not that far away from this. You just left it a little while ago, so you know that there's big changes during this time. Development of motor, memory, and language skills. So again, huge development throughout childhood. Next, we go into puberty. This is when hormones are going to stimulate sexual maturity. Growth ends at the end of puberty and adolescence. So we've got generally how males and females will advance through puberty. So we've got the males here where you see the facial hair being developed. Females, you'll get and body hair as well. So hairs around the genitals, under your arms. For males, facial hair. This is one thing a lot of people have to deal with, right? You've got your acne going on. The male hair is shaving. This is generally 21. So males typically, not always, but they can not be completed growing until they're 21, whereas girls tend to be earlier. Sometimes around 17 would be an average that they would stop growing. And the last stage, we have aging here. So aging starts in the late 20s. So once you get to your 20s, things start changing on the other side. So we've got here an image of a youthful face here, and then we've got the aging face where we've got just gravity coming into play, right? So it's pulling things down. We talked about this before. Skin elasticity begins to be lost. And life expectancy here, we've got really huge differences depending on where you live, which is really interesting. So Canada has one of the highest life expectancies in the world, which is great for us because we live here. And as you can see, females on average live, I think, about 4 years longer than males. Anyways, interesting stuff. If we were in class, we would probably have a group discussion on it. Now, oh yeah. That's me. I used one of those apps. I think this would be me at 110. So, unlikely I'll live that long, but hey, you never know. Okay, assignment for today. So, please do the human growth development worksheet. It's in the lesson, so if you don't have it in that work package, it's attached to the lesson, so you can print it out yourself and hand it in. Okay, thanks guys.